Hello guys, welcome to another Source Gaming discussion. I'm Tris, and I'm joined by Spazzy
Hey everybody.
to discuss the recent reveal of the E3 2018 floor plans. Well, the early release.
Right, everything is subject to change and update, and it will be. If you look at it, you see a lot of spaces haven't been announced as far as who's going to be taking them, and they're obviously not going to remain empty. So,
Right. We're going to be pretty much looking in like some of the recent years that they've done with E3 and kind of take a look and see like how things have changed and what this could mean for different company representation.
right, exactly.
So, I mean, to start off, so Spazzy, you're the Source Gaming member who makes it out to E3
Right.
for the last few years at least. So, I mean, just initially, what do you make of this compared to the last few years that you've been at?
I mean, I wouldn't call myself an E3 expert by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
I've been to two E3s, and there's nothing that really stands out to me as of yet. I know that, just looking at it, Sega doesn't have a spot yet. And we know that Sega, last year they had two different booth spaces. There was one for just like Sega of Europe that had, what's that like RTS game? Not RTS game, it was like a Warhammer game, I think, was like a big focus of it.
I'm not super sure, to be honest.
No, yeah, I'm almost positive it was like a Warhammer game. I'm not very into those games,
Yeah.
so I couldn't tell you. I mean, it looked kind of cool from there, but one of the things you have to understand is E3 isn't a convention. I've had kind of conversations about this with people earlier. Last year it opened to the public, so you got some people that tried to kind of have that vibe. But for most of us there, it's an industry event, and you have so little time, and there's so much that you need to cover that it's work, and you're running around, like literally running from area to area, trying to make appointments or trying to get in line for something before the line gets too big or this or that, and there's a limited amount of time to do everything. So I definitely walked past that, talked to the Sega rep a little, but didn't do much. I know they had Sonic Mania and the other Sonic game that I already forgot because I don't care about the 3D Sonic game.
Sonic
Forces, yeah. I was about to say that I played there, but then they also had a separate area that was like a lot of Atlas stuff. So, I mean, and Sega and Atlas are still coming out with games, so I'm sure they're going to be somewhere. I don't see them on the floor plans now, but there is space. It looks like Microsoft has a fairly small area. But I feel like Microsoft, like if you look at the floor plans, first of all, they are in the South Hall because there's two halls. There's the South Hall and the West Hall, and they're two buildings, completely different from each other. You can walk from one to the other. But the West Hall is always the one that has Nintendo and Sony, and Nintendo and Sony always have kind of around the same amount of space. And Microsoft used to have a huge amount of space there, comparable to Sony or Nintendo. But as of 2 years ago, they've been in the South Hall. And this year it looks like what used to be Microsoft, there's a huge NVIDIA section here. And then to the north of that, or not north, on top of that, looking at the map, it's not, really north or south. There's another block where I couldn't see where it is. A lot of it looks familiar. Xseed was in the same place last year, I remember. You just walked through, and it was one of the first things you saw. Pretty fun little area. Nintendo and Sony have the same exact amount of space. I'm kind of interested to see how what Nintendo does, because every year I've only been there 2 years. Last year was a heavy, like, Super Mario Odyssey theme. And
Yeah.
the year before, it was just like all Breath of the Wild. So I'll be interested to see if it's another focus on one game. I expect kind of the same from Sony looking at it. One thing that I feel like maybe a lot of people don't realize is that with Sony and Microsoft, there's always a big emphasis on like third parties and indies and other stuff. Like, I think I was telling you before the conversation, it's like, yeah, I could play Dead Rising in the Microsoft area, or I could play it, in the Capcom area.
Right.
So they showcase a lot of stuff like that. And, yeah, it looks like if Microsoft just has... If they only have the 823 block that I'm looking at now... let me see if I can pull this up in 2017 for comparison to see what Microsoft
Okay.
had. Yeah, Microsoft had a much larger presence than that. Looking at it, they had but they were already. It was already becoming less important of an event for them because last year they moved to the hall where, and to be honest, it kind of fits more for Microsoft. I thought for them to be in the South Hall because the West Hall, has Sony and Nintendo, but the South Hall has like Ubisoft and Activision, Bethesda. Yeah, so it also has like Capcom and Square Enix and stuff. But all of the big Western third parties are there, so it kind of it kind of like fits a little more in my head. Like, yeah, of course Microsoft would be there. But they moved out of the South Hall, which is kind of like the main hall when you look at it, largely because of the West Hall, largely because of Nintendo and because of Sony.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved from like the console manufacturer hall basically to the other hall, and this year it looks even smaller. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to reserve more space.
Right.
This is preliminary. If you look at it, they might be getting those booths that are right next to it. I'm not even sure, which would give them about the same amount of space as last year. And I don't know. You could think about where Microsoft is heading as a console manufacturer. I kind of personally think that Microsoft is heading more towards being a platform. Like get Xbox on your smart TV, get Xbox on your PC, on your phone. Than just being or we'll still provide premium Xbox experiences on our Xbox Media Center / console. So, but I don't know. Like, I don't think they're definitely still in the race. They're definitely going to still have big press conferences.
Right.
Like I said, with both them and Sony, there's so much third-party garbage that you could really—I don't want to say garbage. There are a lot of great games, but you could cut it out of those areas and have less of a focus. It's like Mario and Rabbids. I could play that in the Ubisoft area or the Nintendo area. That one's a little more makes a little more sense. But like Tekken last year was definitely playable everywhere. Like you can just keep playing Tekken. I don't think Namco had. To be fair, I don't think Namco had any actual booth presence last year. To be honest with you, anyways.
I don't see one.
Yeah, I don't know what that would mean for Microsoft. Besides that, I mean, everything looks pretty good to me. I'd have to do like more of a one-to-one comparison of smaller areas, so I could be like, oh man, Ubisoft got bigger or smaller, but it looks pretty standard to me. Is there anything that, I mean, I know you haven't been to E3, but is there anything that stands out to you?
I think what actually I find interesting is actually the fact that Nintendo and Sony have always had the same space for the last several years. Not even the last 2 with the Odyssey and Zelda setups, but even before that.
Yeah.
So to me, that kind of seems more like they just figured out how to make a better use of the space they already have.
Yeah.
So instead of just a bunch of demo units, they theme everything up. But I guess I'm curious on your take of it. Where do you think they'll? Since we know they still have this space, and because you've been to it multiple times, you might have a better idea than me exactly what size this space is. Do you think Nintendo will do something to the same scale of themed with Zelda and Mario, or do you think they'll go back to before that, where they're just kind of scattering everything about just to make sure they show what they can?
Sony is a lot more of a dense experience. They have They have areas to the side for hey, this is our VR stuff. They have areas for presenting big games. They're all hey, this is the experience for Horizon or whatever they have. And then they have, like I said, a lot of indie games and third-party games and just kind of rows where you can line up. Although I will say that since they opened it, I only have 2 years of experience, but open to the public as opposed to not open to the public, I felt like the open games were a little bit more of a mess, and they had to make sure to put more lines everywhere. Before, it was kind of just line up with 2 or 3 people behind something and play a game. This one was last year was a lot more hectic, and they need to do a lot more to be organized. But Nintendo, I feel like they have a big stage experience where they have some of the like the people from Nintendo of America, the Treehouse people and stuff like that. Like all the Treehouse stuff that they show after E3.
Mm-hmm.
That's going on live on a stage.
Right.
So you can see that. Like they'll have an area for that, and then I wouldn't be surprised because I know last year, like when I was in line for the Fire Emblem Warriors game, right behind me there's an area where all the people came in to play the new Splatoon, and behind that there was an actual stage where people were like they brought people up and they'd be playing like ARMS against each other and give out prizes and stuff. So I mean, I'd imagine it's a very similar setup. The only thing is if there's going to be one or two games that kind of get a focus for all of kind of like the statues and stuff that go around. Like it was, I mean, Breath of the Wild was like all Breath of the Wild, and it was a really cool area, and they kind of use it to bring almost like a theme park style experience. And that's not to say that other companies don't. There's a lot of cool stuff out there that you can see. The Lord of the Rings games, was it Shadow of Mordor this year? What was the game? The big one.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Well, it had a really awesome photo op. Oryx Dragon's giant dragon statue.
That's interesting.
I know someone's going to be upset that I don't know what
Sorry,
game
guys.
what game that was. No, it definitely wasn't Shadow of Mordor. That was like a really old game. Now I'm thinking about it. Man, what was it? It doesn't matter. Anyways, it might have been. Was it like Shadow of War? Is that why I'm getting the
Maybe
names mixed up?
That sounds a little more familiar.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. What was really cool is it's funny because there's some games that you get really psyched for, and like I was so pumped for Horizon, like because it looked cool, but but it was funny because nobody really cared that much. Like I remember like they had like people walking around like in costumes of the like mechs going around. I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I still say that ReCore was a great experience I had one year, and I know the game came out as a disappointment, but I'm like, it was still a great game. I liked it. So, like, yeah, it's funny. It's funny watching E3 hype to see what games, like, nobody really cares about that become huge games, and what games have, like, all the hype, and then they come out and nobody cares.
Exactly.
Dude, I have a feeling, by the way, that Death Stranding is going to be one of those games that by the time it actually comes out and, like, people play it, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people will love that game. Maybe it'll be, like, it'll go down as one of the top 5 greatest games of all time, but I just, like, I don't know, just looking at it, and I have a feeling.
With each, it becomes more obscure with each media presence it gets.
Yeah, right? Like, 'cause when it first was announced, it was a big deal, and now it's like, I don't know. Hype is a dangerous thing. You got to make sure to maintain your levels of hype.
And that's why, maintaining hype is why I wanted to really talk about this, because the main conversation I've seen about these floor plans since they came out is people saying, oh, Microsoft's really small, and oh, Nintendo has a big space again, Sony has a big space again. I think we can expect big things, and I don't know if that's exactly what that means.
I'm
honestly
looking at it, maybe I'm wrong, but like I'd be surprised if Microsoft doesn't also have 623 and 837. Looking at
they probably do, honestly.
Well, because now look at so I pulled up the 2017 and 2018 plans. Look at Square Enix in 2018. Right there in the South Hall, bottom right corner. Now look at 2017. It's the same space, but Square Enix eventually got all 3 of those blocks instead of just that one block. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
So, but then again, Square Enix also has that big block to the left of that. So, who knows what, I don't know, things change, you know?
Exactly.
Square Enix looks like it has a much... What Square Enix games are coming out that they're going to be so excited to show? I guess Kingdom Hearts is probably going to be a big one for them.
Probably, yeah, honestly. That's probably going to be the biggest one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they're supposed to release this year, isn't it?
You know what? They might have a playable demo of Final Fantasy VII. The remake.
That too, yeah.
And then besides that, I don't know, they could announce a new Tomb Raider. Because, yeah, look at that. See, that's something that's interesting, is that look how much more space Square Enix has than they did last year. They actually took Microsoft's old space. And
that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, they actually have more space this year than Microsoft had last year. Because Square Enix didn't have that much space, but they took all of Microsoft's, and then part of what they had, and then a little bit extra from what they had. Yeah, that is interesting. Because, like, Capcom has remained almost exactly the same, right? In fact, I think they are the same exact block.
Yeah, they have.
Maybe a little bit bigger. And you look how Square extends past where Capcom is, so that was part of Square's old thing. So yes,
exactly.
So that tells me, looking at it, that Square's probably going to have a big year compared to last year. I mean, to be fair, last year I remember, and also just anecdotally, personally, the people at Square were awesome. Just great reps, great people to talk to. I mean, some people are better than others. I'm not going to say who I had bad experiences talking to, but the Square reps they had there are awesome, or were at least. But I mean, all they had were a bunch of mobile games, the port of Final Fantasy XII, and Dissidia, I feel like. So they didn't need as much.
Yeah, makes sense.
So this year looks like it's going to be a big year for them. So let's just see who else has, like, extra space. Bethesda looks like it might be a little bit bigger. And remember, Bethesda had a pretty big year, actually. Last year.
That is true.
Like, they had... That was also an awesome, like, thing. And I wasn't able to actually go through and play the new Wolfenstein, but they had like a really awesome area set up. They were actually giving people milkshakes.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just look real quick, see if anybody has. I don't know what NVIDIA ever needs that big of a space for.
They had to be showing off like something. I hear some people thinking that NVIDIA having that space thinks they're going to show the Shield too.
Does that mean we'll have the Switch 2 in a couple of years if they just show the Shield?
Something.
Maybe they'll show that Chinese version of the Shield with the Nintendo games on it.
Oh man, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just seeing who, because most everybody else is staying about the same. Like I said, I'd be interesting to see if Microsoft might take up more space or not. I don't know how much it actually says about Microsoft. Like I said, last year they were in the same building. It's not like they just moved to the other building. It just might be a different focus on what you get at Microsoft because they have such a small first party.
Exactly.
I went like 2 years ago. Sea of Thieves was pretty cool. But besides that, like, I don't know. Like I said, I played Recore. But I mean, the first party, they're not lighting the world on fire with first parties. If they're not going to announce like a new Halo or something, then they don't need that much space.
Right.
For all we know, they might be ramping up to do the next Xbox. It might be the exact opposite of what everyone thinks.
That is fair.
They just don't have as much to show. But I also don't think it's that space. I don't know. Maybe it will be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know how to read these maps. But I'd be surprised if they don't expand to at least one of those other boxes and have an area comparable to what they had last year.
When I'm looking at this, it seems like there's also like new additions. Like looking at where Capcom is now, next to them, previously was like a bunch of unmarked spaces and Alienware, but then now there's this giant box for Epic Games.
You know what though? I can't remember because they had a big thing for Monster Hunter at Capcom, and they had an area. I mean that could have just be vendor space.
That is true.
I know that building, but most of the vendor space is kind of those blue ones up there.
Yeah.
So there, if you want to do like like a lot of third parties that sell controllers and stuff like that, are right in that area. I couldn't remember what it was. That's the thing. I would have to see what like the finalized floor plans were. But yeah, I mean, did Epic have any room the year before?
I haven't. I've been trying to look around and see, and I don't see Epic Games like anywhere else on this map. I mean, granted, they could have been added much later on a different one.
Yeah, because
version
this
of this one,
isn't the
but,
finalized maps. That's the other thing too. Looking at 2017, because people are really interested when it's first announced, but nobody cares when it's finalized. But for reference purposes, those are probably better to look at. I mean, Activision.
But of course, those are much harder to find.
Yeah, Activision seems to have about the same amount. Warner Brothers may have a smaller amount, but to be fair, last year they had Injustice, they had some Lego games, Lego Dimensions. I don't know what they have coming out now, but maybe they'll have a slightly smaller presence. Everybody else is looking fairly similar. Take-Two, Namco, Ubisoft looks almost exactly the same. So,
if we look at back in the West Hall, last year it was like GameSpot, IGN in this little area, Turtle Beach, but now it's just gung ho over there. I don't think they were there before.
yeah, I mean, for small...
No, I don't see them there. Yeah, I don't see them on the previous map, but yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, like I said, we would have to look. We'd have to wait till it gets closer to E3. Maybe if they throw some more floor plans out for us, we can really compare. But
yeah,
I think right now that's about. I mean, those are my thoughts on it. It'll be interesting. I'd like to see if Nintendo does another game focus and what game it might be. Sony, I don't know. Sony's probably gonna have the same sort of big presence they always have. They're gonna have that same app to get into lines. It doesn't really work that they've had for the last 2 years. But whatever. So
I do have one last question for you about this though, because of you went in 2 separate years, so you might actually be able to answer this fairly well. Actually, do you think the reservation spaces might also be affected by knowing in advance that the public's going to be able to go this year, so they're trying to change up any pacing?
I mean, it could be. I'll say if they continue to have it open, and this isn't like I want E3 to be mine, it's ours.
Right.
No, but it's not designed for that many people, and
yeah,
it's not. Like I said, it's an expo. It's not like a convention. So
yeah,
like when you have the public in there more, there's more space for like vendors and places to eat, and like other because it's a what they want is a different vibe from what the actual event is.
Correct.
And I feel like they're gonna have to change some things with the flow because there's too many people. And then there's people there that actually need to go in order to write articles about things and do interviews and stuff. And maybe I don't know. I honestly, maybe if they did gave a few hours that was not access to the public before or after, so you'd have more room, or extended it a couple days, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But just the actual people in there, I think as E3 evolves into what it's becoming, if they want, because I hear they want to have even more public open this year, then they have to take steps so that it still functions for its original purpose, and also so that everybody, the public included, can enjoy themselves there and not feel like, hey, I just waited 5 hours in line to play 5 minutes of a game, But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on that, and it could be that they're still throwing that out. But to be honest with you, looking at other floor plans, it looks like it's always in flux for the this far out. So
yeah, sounds about right. All right, well, I think we both went through most of our thoughts there, so I think that would wrap up this discussion then.
Yeah, I mean, if any of you guys out there on YouTube have any thoughts, if we missed something obvious, like I said, I am no way an expert on E3, and I am in no way an expert on floor plans. So this is just us briefly glancing over it. It's not like we poured hours of research, If there's anything we missed, please point it out. I'd love to know personally. So
yeah, and in general, what do you guys make of this? Just let us know in the comments.
Yep.
And you can find both of our social media links in the description below. And as Nintendix has started saying a lot, and Push has started saying a lot, always remember to return to the source.
Yep, exactly that. Bye, guys.